Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and specifically welcome back to my masterclass series where I go above and beyond my regular tank reviews to help you master your tanks. Today we're going to be looking at the Rheinmetall Panzerwagens, the tier 10 German light tank, and it in theory is the most competitive light tank in the game, at least when you play it in Onslaught. This is all you see with regards to light tank competition, apart from some hipsters playing a 13105 or a T100 LT occasionally. And today I'm going to let you know why this is the light tank you want to get your hands on if you want to play the most competitive game mode, but also for all of the players out there who want to try and make this thing work in the random queue, just how good is it? So how has the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen been performing, at least in the random queue, on the last 30 days on the European server? Well, interestingly enough, it has the third worst win ratio overall, and if we take a look at win ratio difference, the second worst win ratio overall. So it's not nearly as good as something like a Manticore for scouting the random queue. Now that's going to come down to the fact that the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is huge, and it has horrible armor that can get overmatched by absolutely everything. So from a getting spotted in the random queue and dealing within the chaos of the random queue, it's a little bit wet with regards to how it performs there. However, the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen inside Onslaught, when it gets to use the scout plane, and camo doesn't really matter in there, then it has a lot of statistics that are actually awesome. Ridiculous top speed of 75 kilometers an hour, great damage per minute, good accuracy, decent penetration on its standard rounds, and great pen on its premium rounds, and lovely HE as well for taking on other lightly armored vehicles. When you combine this with the vehicle's awesome base view range of 420, it gives you a lot of flexibility with reducing that view range to be able to enhance other aspects of the tank. So crew-wise, this vehicle, the commander and the gunner are high pressure roles, and the reason for that is they're also the loader on this vehicle, and considering you've got 3 different types of awesome ammunition, I would thoroughly recommend that you have a 0 skill commander and a 0 skill gunner so you can have intuition as well. On the commander, you're not even competitive until you have brothers, recon, situational awareness, concealment, and intuition. And that's before you've got things like repairs or even eagle eye on this vehicle. And with regards to your gunner, who's also the loader, you're going to have brothers, concealment, designated target, intuition. That's before you've got repairs and even deadeye, which is lovely on this tank because it fires often. The only low pressure position is the driver, but I'd still say that they're actually high pressure because you definitely want to have controlled impact, especially if you're playing Onslaught for ramming the other Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. So you definitely got to have things like brothers, concealment, controlled impact, repairs, then off-road driving and smooth ride, and that's before you've reduced the high engine chance to be set on fire. Equipment-wise, I kind of have 2 builds for this vehicle. The first one is going to be a vision system with vents and an exhaust. Now that is if you're using a premium consumable, and that's because I can still get up to 479 meters view range with just bounty vents on this vehicle. And I really think that making everything about this vehicle about 3 to 4% better will be better than just improving the view range by an additional 7% roughly. My second build on this tank, if I'm playing Onslaught, will be a radio with a gun rammer and vents to be able to maximize that combat performance. However, if I was going for a second build outside of Onslaught, I would probably drop the radio set to either take a turbo, although this thing flips a lot if you do that, or an exhaust so you can really shoot your opponents at long range without getting spotted, or alternatively you could get vert stabs if you must have incredible gun handling. Field mods wise, this vehicle's simple. You take the top speed to make it ludicrously fast, rate of fire, not the accuracy on this vehicle. The next one's a little bit tricky. If you absolutely utterly must ram in Onslaught, you might want to reduce the HE and the ramming damage that you receive, but for most people it's going to be the reverse speed, otherwise this thing just feels awkward. I'm going to take the firepower slot to be able to improve the gun rammer if you're not using bounty. The penultimate field mod, I'm definitely reducing my view range to improve my concealment. You will do that with or without a premium consumable. And for the final field mod, choose the foliage, not the vehicles that are moving. So marks of excellence wise, even though the Rheinmetall's win ratio is down at the bottom of the list, the actual numbers that you require to get your third mark is at 4,400, which is right in the middle, but nowhere near the echelons of the Manticore at 5k. Okay, so first up, we're going to be rolling out on Westfield, and of course on Westfield it's bushy, so I'm going to be taking a vision system, vent, and an exhaust. And let me talk about the directive as well. If you're really pushing your marks of excellence in all of your light tanks, but especially in a Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, I would thoroughly recommend the designated target directive. Now, to make this directive actually worthwhile, you must have designated target at 100%, because what the directive does is it doubles the effect of the designated target. So designated target with Base Quill I didn't realize I'm fighting Jake Paul soon. Goodness gracious. Sorry. Back to it, Quacky Babs. With a base crew skill on designated target is 2 seconds. So you'll spot an enemy for 10 seconds. Designated target will be 2 seconds on top of that, making 12 seconds total. However, if you have the directive, 12 becomes 14 because the 2 seconds is doubled to 4. However, let me clarify that crew skills in World of Tanks are affected by overall crew skill or major qualification, whatever you want to call it. And so the premium consumable and vents will further boost that, so it actually becomes more like 15 seconds that you'll be lighting up your opponents. Now remember, that's only going to be if you have your gun arc 10 degrees to the left or to the right of where your gun is aiming. So if you want to keep your opponents lit up with designated target, it's very important that you keep your gun directly, well, not directly, but within about 10 degrees, as if you're playing the new Błękitna, the new Polish tank destroyer, which has 10 degrees to the left and 10 degrees to the right. So if you know that vehicle's gun arc, you must keep your gun arc over your opponent to keep that designated target working. And if you do this, you have more than enough time to go into the bush, then pull back behind the bush and shoot through the bush. I'd like to highlight the HE intuition switch against the 13105 at the start of the game, and I just knew as soon as I got rid of the light tank on the enemy team that it's farm. So one of the big things that you have to do in the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is to not just make sure you win that light tank fight, it's to set your vehicle up in a way that you will be able to win that light tank fight. Maybe about 80% of the player base won't be setting their vehicle up in the correct way. Although the correct way is up for debate in most tanks, but I don't think it's really up for debate in something like this. By boosting the camo with that penultimate field mod, by boosting the camo with an exhaust, by even boosting the camo even more with vents, while I lose a little bit of the view range that I might have if I had replaced the vents with the coated optics, it means that I keep my opponents lit up for a staggering amount of time with that designated target with the directive. As I said, over 15 seconds my opponents will be lit up. I could increase that even more if I was to take a radio, but would I sacrifice the vision system to be able to get that radio? That would be pretty nutty, because I think the vision system just helps me to be able to see through the bushes and keep going. So in the first 3 minutes of this game, it's kind of pretty much done. Although I have to admit, driving like that, do you see there's a big thing on the map? It begins with an F and it ends with a 5, and it usually sends me back to the garage if I get spotted by it in a Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. So I hightailed out of there to try and get away from the FE4005 in a bit of a panic loop to get out of their render distance. But oh, this is just delicious, right? I'm driving along with kind of like 40, 42, maybe 50% camo right now. Maybe not quite 50, maybe like 48% camo, I think, with the bounty exhaust. And I can just get close enough to my opponents where I can see them and they can't see me. And when you can see your opponents and they can't see you, then big numbers happen. 6,000 combined in the first 3.5 minutes of this battle, and things are only going to get better as we're now dumping HE shells again. I have to admit, the ammunition on this vehicle is undoubtedly one of the best parts of the tank, and I just penned an HE shell on the edge of, well, on the side of the E50M there. 428 damage HE against the E50M. I'm going to go forwards till I get close enough to the tree, switch out to an AP because I don't need the HE, and maybe I'll need them later on for the back of a tank or the side of a medium vehicle. And this is just Rheinmetall Panzerwagen 101. We're up to 8k combined pretty much in the first 4 minutes of this battle, and that's excluding any maybe hidden spotting that we had. The TVP lights me up from the corner. I jump out, dodge a heat shell, put an extra shot into them, dodge another heat shell. They're under pressure, so we've easily got enough room to be able to play around with. And just making sure I'm not still spotted. Put another one into the SWB1, and this is just getting silly now. Just over 4 minutes and 20 seconds into this game, and we're packing 9,200 combined, pretty much. And there's still meat on the table. There was 8,000 hit points, and I thought, oh, it's going to be a huge game, but oh no. We don't hit the FE405 with the HE shell. Going to go after the TVP now. A little bit more cheeky. Work this ridgeline. Remember that your gun depression is excellent on this tank, so the gun kind of extends through the roof, so it doesn't really matter because they'll shoot the area above your gun mantle before they manage to hit that. So we put another couple of shots into the TVP, and where did those 8,000 hit points go? They just disappeared. Maybe the hit points of the heavies were updating. Just looking for that lower plate. Unfortunately, don't manage to hit it. My team managed to finish them off. And we're now at like 9,500 combined, which in 5 minutes, it's a meaty round of World of Tanks. And this is just Rheinmetall Panzerwagen 101. Even though I didn't take a gun rammer, the damage per minute since Wargaming buffed this vehicle is not bad. It's not a bad light tank even without a gun rammer. Unlike something like a Manticore, where the damage per minute feels absolutely horrendous. So there we go. 9,800 combined to start off our Rheinmetall battle. So why did we win this one? Well, we won this one because we destroyed the enemy light tank. We destroyed the enemy light tank because we had better camo and better speed than they did. We got into position. We used our intuition switch to load those HE shells, dominate the light, and then after you've dominated the light, then it's down to you and your skills as a light tank player to know the bushes to work, to spot your opponents out, to give your team vision, and then importantly, to not be afraid to progress the battle, but not too quickly, as I nearly did against the FV4005. And this is just the dream scenario as to what you've got to try and do in your RHM. Another little bit of a filthy tip is when you're pushing for your third mark of excellence, if you're using vents on your vehicle, you can take your tank to another level, and that is by using the vent directive. Now, what the vent directive will do is you will spot your opponents for a little bit less than you would do if you were doing the designated target perk. However, the vent directive pushes your commander to like 125% base crew skill. Now, when you push your commander to 125% base crew skill or beyond, which is only possible with a bounty vent and a vent directive, or a bond vent and a vent directive, that means that they actually round to the nearest 10%, which is 130, which then you divide by 10, which gives the rest of your crew 13% extra crew skill. So it'll be improving all of the other aspects of your vehicle. And one thing that's interesting is that because this vehicle has a dedicated gunner that's also the loader, then they're boosting all of those skills on the tank, such as your intuition switch, which can make this thing ludicrously quick for switching your shells, but also for doing things like your designated target, which is on your gunner, which is getting a tiny little bit of boost. Now, definitely not as much as what the directive would have done. The directive would have pushed it to more kind of like 15. But at least this is probably going to be more like about 13 or so with the extra percentage of skill that you're going to be getting from that, which does boost things. Now, there's one thing that's very important in your light tanks, and that is that in this kind of a scenario when you're playing against a Manticore, that you just have to relax. You can see I'm looking around, getting a little bit jumpy, but one of the worst things you can do in light tanks, I found when I've been trying to get 3 marks in my tier 10 lights, is to try and push the tempo too early. Sure, it can be fun, sure it can be brash, but in this kind of a scenario where I've got nobody towards the north, I have to be really careful. If I get spotted here, or even if I spot the enemy light tank, or anyone, like if I was to advance right now and I light up their tank destroyers that are around here, who's going to shoot them? Maybe an STRV, maybe the T95 E6 up on the hill, maybe the 705. None of those players are actually going to be able to get any shots. So what you need to be thinking about doing is not only protecting yourself, especially if like the Manticore comes through the way, but also thinking about how far can your allies shoot? How far will they realistically be able to help you? Is there a point of being able to try to extend the vision that far? And while I took a little bit of a risk by going up the slope there, with the Manticore possibly being in the field and catching me out, I feel like being up here just feels safer, because the Manticore is not going to be able to cross to be able to get me. But also, more importantly, I managed to get some shots out towards this T30. And if my opponents go up towards the north, then I'm not going to be isolated in the center. It's a tricky one, the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, because you're not like a Manticore where you have this god tier camo where you can pretty much just get spotted everywhere and anywhere. Well, I should say you can go everywhere and anywhere because you're not going to get spotted. It's this pseudo damage dealing, pseudo light tank where you can still be some pretty good damage support, but you also still have to try and focus on getting view range for your allies as well. But by coming across here and just getting rid of the IS-7 and going back into the bushes, hopefully catching a few of the enemies as they manage to push. But now that we know where the Manticore is, that makes me oh so much comfortable in the center of the map. Once you know where their vision is, then it's time to hopefully extend your own team's vision. So I'm going to cut across the center. I'm going to go and retake that position because I feel like now I know the Manticore isn't in the middle. I can just hang around towards this location. And now that we've got the guns up on the plateau above, that's going to mean that my vision in the center is actually useful. Previously, when I was back here in this bush, if I'd just driven across here, to all intents and purposes, the Manticore is anywhere here, and I just die. But now that I know the Manticore's over there, I can advance into this position. I can extend my team's view range safely. Something that you must get a feel of when you're playing any of your tier 10 light tanks, but especially in a Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, is how far can you push without actually risking too much? Because you're this gigantic box of like 20 millimeters of armor. It's not going to work if you get lit up. It's one of the easiest tanks to hit, I'd say. This relatively fast but gigantic box, which gets overmatched by everything, and HE rounds are going to smash it as well. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to spot the heavy tanks across the north to hope that my T95 E6 and my 705 are going to be able to get them. But it looks like I get lit up by the Manticore here, so it's time to hightail it out of there, not allow the Conqueror to be able to get a side shot in me. And what I really want to do right now is just see if there's a way that I can find the Manticore, or just try and keep these tanks lit up safely without getting spotted by the Manticore. And how different is this game to the previous one? We're not even at 1,500 combined before that shot in the first 5 minutes of this battle. So I wanted to show you that while on Westfield, we destroyed the enemy light tank, and then we dominated the game and we got that near 10k in 5 minutes. Sometimes you've got to take it slower. You can't just rush in, unless you think there's an opportunity to assassinate the enemy light tank. Sometimes you have to play chess on the battlefield. You have to move your piece into a location where hopefully you're not going to get spotted. Try and remove the pieces that could spot you, and then work with your team to allow them to have the line of fire. And irrelevant of how much your team tell you to do, fall back this, fall back that, spot here, there, I realized that I wasn't going to be giving them any kind of vision. And I have to admit, when I saw the Rheinmetall, when I saw the object 279E in the center of the map, I realized I have to try and light up this target. I have to try and get them out. But I'm just wondering, where's the Manticore? And oh god, the Manticore's right there. Luckily, some quick reactions. We managed to hit them once. My team managed to hit them a little bit as well. We get hit by an STRV-103B. It's about just trying to get out of that scenario. But in this situation as well, I was thinking to myself, okay, you know what? I still got 1,300 hit points, and the Manticore's down to a one-shot. This game is neck and neck, super close. 9,000 hit points apiece. It's identical by 28 hit points. I was thinking to myself, though, if I can manage to get this Manticore out, if I can just slow roll towards him, and even if I proxy spot him, there's a good chance that I can survive, but definitely not going to move forwards with the STRV spotted. If your team, if you've lit up a target like that, don't go forwards anymore, because your team are obviously going to be shooting the tank destroyer caught out of position, and then they won't be reloaded for the Manticore, or they won't be reloaded for new vision. But as soon as they disappear, I'm thinking, oh, is this really worth it? Is it worth going after this Manticore? The T95E6 tells me they're wanting to be able to shoot them, and I say, it's dangerous, but I try. It's dangerous, but I try. It's completely honest right now. I'm hoping that my team can manage to get rid of this 279E. If the Manticore is still here, it's very risky. I say kill the 279E first, then I can. But unfortunately, the T30 finishes off the T95. And I'm starting to get a little bit more nervous that my gun light might be dwindling. But luckily, my team are advancing towards the northeast of this map. They're starting to crush that flank. And so once those players manage to get into position, I'm hoping that they're going to get the 279E. And you can see that I say multiple times, wait for east, then I scout. Because I've got the 279E lit up. They don't realize they're still spotted. It should be as easy as a formality of the T125 loading a heat round and dumping it in. I say east, kill 279E first. It's creating this plan. It's creating the vision, waiting for the pieces to be removed. Then when the pieces have been removed, then you can manage to make the advance. And you can see that the CC Mark II, who was in a position to dump me if I'd gone on the Manticore, is now falling back. And the 279E is just driving away, thinking he's not spotted. You've been spotted the last 30 seconds, bud. So now I'm going to ping the map. Now, well, the T95 is going to ping the map. And now I'm going to push the Manticore. And there he is, right there. Assassination. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Pray, 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 pray. try and light up the CC Mark II, and I think in this situation it's just better if I keep going forwards and try to get underneath my opponent's gun line. And let's see what happens here. So in the first 8.5 minutes of this battle, we've averaged like 3,900 combined, nearly 4K combined. It's not a, well, no, sorry, no, yeah, nearly 4K combined. It's not a terrible game, but it's definitely not a great game. This isn't even a 3-mark requirement right now. But this is the stage of the game that you live for. This is the stage of the game that you sweated and you were patient for, and you played that methodical game of chess all the way through the battle, because now there's only tank destroyers left. Or maybe there'd be only heavy tanks left. And now you can really start to have some fun. So I'm thinking in this scenario, who am I going to go for? I'm going to go for the T95. Am I going to go for the CC Mark II? Am I going to go for this T95 right in front? You can see that I'm loading an HE shell, looking at the CC Mark II, thinking if I'm going to go after them. For some reason, this is suggesting that it's not going to pen, but that might have just been a bug. I can't imagine the T95 has 120 millimeters of rear armor. And oh, baby. We put another AP shell in. We're going to go for the HE shell here, and hopefully this Italian booty just sits still for me. And boom, 376. That's actually a low roll there on the back of the CC Mark II. And now, just like that, we're up to nearly 6,000 combined. And that is a lot more delicious. I'm not going to hang around for the CC Mark II. In this game, I was going for my marks of excellence. I had my second, going for my third. I'm sweating, I'm try-harding. One into the side of the T-30, the STRV-103B trying to go after me. I'm thinking, will this T-30 aim at me here? I'm just going to keep risking it. I can take a shot from them. I can take 3 shots from the STRV-103B unless they fire HE shells into me. And now I'm going to be loading heat because I need the heat to go through the lower plate of the STRV-103B. They knock out, I think it was my commander, but remember my commander's also my loader on this vehicle, very important. STRV misses. Unfortunately, I bounced there. I guess I should have aimed just a little bit higher, so there's less distance from the spaced armor and the hull armor behind. But as we can see, the second one goes through. The STRV unfortunately hits me, firing gold very bravely, and a Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. Maybe he's run out of regular rounds for all we know. But I'm liking the look of this game now. Now we're up to 7K combined. We were at 4, 5.5, what, like 8 minutes into the game? And now 11 minutes into the game, we're up to 7. Make that over 7, 7.2, and we finish them off. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful. With about 7,300 combined. And this was just one of those battles where you had to play it slowly. You just had to not dive into the situation, just be more methodical with your vision, and eventually, through out-scouting even the most dangerous light tank like a Manticore, making the difference in what looked like it was a stalemate. So game 3, we're again going to be using vision system with vents and exhaust, and we're putting vents inside the directive slot. You'll see that at the start of the battle, this is something very important to do. Let your team know where you're going to spot. I say, hi friends, I will spot the field first. Please try to hit their 13105. We can see that already a couple people are saying, okay, affirmative. I've asked them to pre-aim, and let's hope that my team are going to dump the 13105. We can see that the platoon on the enemy team must be pretty good. We can see that the T92 on the enemy team got legend in one of the seasons of Onslaught. It's most likely the 13105 is using the anonymizer, and the STB1 is using the badge, which shows that I think they got silver overall in multiple seasons of ranked. So in this situation, I don't really think that I'm going to have a gun line that's going to be helping me out with the Centurion Action 10. So it's just about hanging still, waiting, hoping that the light tank is going to make a mistake on the enemy team. And oh, baby, that is a mistake. That is such a big mistake by the 13105 on the enemy team. That's all it takes. I press affirmative key knowing just how big that was. And it looks like the enemy team did not expect the RHM to be there. And so what we're going to do now is a lot like what you saw me do on Westfield in this video. Once you've got that light tank out, you have better camo than anyone else. Unless they've got a medium tank sitting in a bush, you are always going to be having the vision advantage. And so this is where you want to try and push the tempo, push the flank. This is the biggest thing that a lot of Rheinmetall Panzerwagen drivers don't do. To realize that to all intents and purposes, this is like a flanking medium tank. And since Wargaming buffed this vehicle so substantially, boy, is it an absolute brute. Unfortunately, the HE shell not penetrating the griller there, and I'm down to my last HE shell. Well, hopefully this one's going to go in against him. There we go, 409 damage. Now we're going to be on the AP. Unfortunately, I get spotted there by the griller. A bit of a misplay by me. But hopefully we're going to avoid the shell. We don't. We get punished for half of our hit points. What a mistake there. Got greedy. Didn't think about the gorilla managing to spot me. Do you know what's really awkward as well? Is that 400 of that assistance is now tracking. And remember, from a mark's perspective, your tracking and your vision don't get added together. So that's 485 assistance that we don't actually have. So even though this game looks like it's 2,700 combined so far, we'd have to take 500 off that. So it's only 2,200 combined. Oh, marks, you fickle beast. So while I made a bit of a misplay there against the gorilla, I guess I should be taught some respect. So you see that I'm kind of dipping my toes into the bath this time before I jump in and burn my knees. Yes, we're going to say burn our knees. Because there's another gorilla on the enemy team. And if there's one thing that I know is that if you get hit for 850 by the first gorilla, you know you're probably going to get hit for 850 by the second gorilla, although that's not true. Statistics are statistics. RNG is RNG. I'm going to get hit for, on average, 750, so it doesn't matter how hard the first gorilla hit me, the second one should be hitting me for 750 on average as well. And then nevertheless, when you're a one-shot, you are a one-shot. You don't want to risk it. Okay, so we're just hanging around on the fringes, and this is where that exhaust build is just so lovely. By having that extra camo, it allows you to always be able to spot your opponents at decent distances while they can't see you. And then hopefully it's just about a little bit of marksmanship here and there, and forcing the Clan Wars reward tanks out of the alleyway, or at least punishing them for being in the alleyway. And this is where, when Wargaming buffed the accuracy of this vehicle to now be a lovely base .33, even with you nerfing it a little bit by 3%. Oh, I don't have any HE rounds for the T-92, so we're going to have to go after them. And I'm going to keep pushing them forwards here, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want them to turn around quickly. If you're playing against a non-turreted tank, if you can push them forwards, it actually prevents them from traversing their vehicle. They have to go forwards, and so you can actually slow them from being able to traverse to be able to come after you. Again, the gorilla, no HE rounds there for the gorilla. Am I going to get spotted by this tank, or are they just going to sit there? Well, you know what, I'm a greedy little baby, so I'm going to just try and get as many shots in against this gorilla as I possibly can. Why don't I just go towards the left where I'm sitting behind the bush and then he won't be able to see me? Although, to be honest, probably the mouse is going to get me anyway. And nothing quite... there you go. Retrospect. And while I'm greedy and I'm now down to a one-shot, at least I got to free farm that gorilla. And even with the 500 loss, now we're up to roughly about like a 4,800 combined game. But let me put that into perspective. If I was to die right now from a mark's perspective, this is only kind of like a 0.1 climb. So if your marks were at 70, you're likely to be at 70.1, roughly, after that. So that really shows you what kind of a standard you're going to have in this tank. And my team are actually down by 2,000 hit points. This is a very close game. And I'm starting to figure out, why don't I just use kind of like the bush here to hopefully be able to spot this mouse? But I think, in retrospect, I wish I was going across to the east right now. I wish I was going across to like the K7-8 area. And oh yeah, looks like old QuickyBaby figured it out. Although in the moment, in the heat of shooting the heavy tanks in the back, looks like he didn't quite figure it out soon enough. And now that I'm in this position, now that I have all of my opponents right where I want them, and luckily our opponents are starting to lose a substantial amount of hit points. Looks like maybe the 121B in the mouse that I was outside the render distance. Now the hit points are updating. I'm not going to be able to get that mouse. Am I going to be able to get this mouse? Intuition switch, oh so important. The AP shell drop-off on this vehicle is awful, by the way. Your 242 is going to go down to like about 200 at long range. But remember, your heat doesn't change over distance. So when you're engaging at long range, even if you're shooting relatively lightly armored tanks, you should be firing heat in this vehicle. Because it'll be 280 at 50 meters, it'll be 280 at 500 meters. If you shoot tanks outside your render distance, it'll be 280 at 700 meters, which is very substantial. Whereas that AP drop-off is going to be crazy. Engaging vehicles that are towards the max of your render distance, let alone outside of it. So this game is a good example where we took the spotting build to win the initial spotting fight, but afterwards you would kind of want the rate of fire build, I guess, to really get going. However, what I will clarify is that even if we don't have the gun rammer to have that improved rate of fire, the spotting build still allows us to just work within the vision now. And this mouse, he really wants us. I just want this mouse to just Just go away. Let me shoot the 121B, mate. And I guess I'm being greedy here, but luckily I should be able to react before the mouse can. Luckily the mouse doesn't look like they spot us. Maybe the exhaust paying off. And boy, the damage on this thing, it adds up. It really adds up. In a way, it adds up faster than a medium tank, because a medium tank will get spotted more often. And annoying, we get a little bit more tracking on the 121B, which means that 700 of this assistance won't count. But I still count that as a really good game. 5,800 damage, 2,400 assistance. This was 8,200 combined. Then we got to take about the 700 off. So from a marks perspective, it was 7.5k. It was just a lovely game. And again, because we managed to get rid of the light tank on the enemy team. And that is just the dream scenario for this vehicle. Get rid of the light tank on the enemy team and capitalize. And if you're able to do that, that is how you have your really meaty games for any of your light tanks, but especially your RHM. Okay, one more game in the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. And this game, we're going to be going for the gun rammer vents. We're going to be using a gun rammer directive, and you'll see that we're using a vision system as well. Now, that third choice, the vision system, that's going to be up to you. If you want to go for the vision system to really be able to outspot your opponents while also still having the firepower, go for it. If you want to run an exhaust instead, that will allow you to sneak into position better rather than outspot your opponents to use that firepower. In my opinion, I would probably be inclined to use the exhaust instead of the vision system, because quite often it's kind of outspotting your opponents that's more important. You don't actually need the extra vision to help you see them. You'd hope that your 479 meters view range would be enough without the vision system, right? And oh, that 13105. What is it about me and just crushing 13105s in this video? These HE shells just so darn delicious. I'm hoping I can get a follow-up shot right into his turret. But honestly, that 13105, while it's annoying to leave them there, as they might be spotting my team, it's not really part of my plan. Part of my plan here is to show you that the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is a very deadly sniper. It's definitely better than a tier 9 medium. It's not as good as a tier 10 medium. To say that the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen was close to a Leopard would be downright lying. The Leopard has 420 alpha, 100 extra alpha. It has way better pen on its standard rounds, way better pen on its premium rounds, better accuracy, better gun handling, all of these things. But the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is no slouch. With regards to vert stabs on this tank, you could do if you wanted, but when Wargaming buffed the gun handling on this vehicle to 0.1 when moving and 0.08 when turning the turret, you could probably end up just getting smooth ride on your driver and getting snapshot on your gunner, and that's probably going to be enough without having to use the vert stabs on this tank. And I do think that when we're talking about damaging builds here, that in addition to the gun rammer and the vents, you'll be best to... You could even use a durability device on this vehicle, especially in Onslaught. If you wanted to... Actually, what am I talking about? In Onslaught, you want to use the radio system. But some mad lads out there will probably go for a durability build, as well as like the gun rammer and the radio in Onslaught. Although, if Wargaming make any more changes in Onslaught, let me clarify. In the future viewers tuning into this after it's not released on its release day of the 15th of May, let me clarify that if Wargaming makes substantial changes to Onslaught, that the radio might not be competitive Onslaught anymore. But then again, if that's the case, maybe the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen won't be competitive in Onslaught anymore. I'll just say a little bit about that. That I really hope that Wargaming don't make too many more nerfs to light tanks in Onslaught. I think it's very important that we have light tanks in Onslaught, because if we lose light tanks in Onslaught, it'll pretty much just be a two-class race. It's just going to be heavy tanks, medium tanks. We'll only have 2 out of 5 of the classes in the game actually playing. Talk about 2 out of 5 classes. That is nearly a couple of HE shells that managed to go in against a medium tank there. And we follow it up with another HE pen against the standard B. When this thing gets going with its HE shells, it is sickening. Then you do have the alpha damage of a Leopard. However, you definitely don't have the penetration. But like, you should be able to make 120 millimeters work in quite a few scenarios. Although, when we think about it, penning 3 out of 4 HE shells there still means that we're probably breaking even compared to what we would have done if we just penned 4 AP shells there. So unless you're penning your HE shells at least 80 to 90% of the time, don't whiff HE shells at your opponents. It's far better to go for the AP or the heat in that scenario. And it's just so crazy how the damage disparity, right? You're either doing 412 or you're doing 27, just depending on whether you actually hit that weak point on the char or not. Okay, so a decent game here so far for Outpost. We've just dominated the center, and that's what this tank can do. If I'm playing on mines, I'll do exactly the same thing. If I'm playing on Tundra, I'll do exactly the same thing. I'll take this build, I'll contest the hill, and I'll try to brawl everything that I possibly can. And if I need to, I'll abandon the hill, and I'll abandon the hill fine. I'll just try and find a way to sneak off on mines. Easy to sneak off on mines, easy to sneak off on Tundra. But contest those early positions. And on this map as well, easy to sneak off as well. I could just drive straight up, and then if I had driven like this around here, I'd just go in like that, or just go around there and get out if you see that there's multiple tanks or autoloaders going after you. However, what I want to highlight in this game, there's a couple things that I want to highlight. Firstly, that using a damage build on the RHM can be great. And secondly, that at times in your games, it's very important that you make the switch. You make that switch to make the killer play. This game was pretty much completely even. We were ahead by like 1,000 hit points or a couple thousand hit points. But by waiting there, now I let the 113 on, or the 111 on the enemy team know, oh, he's there. And when I had a look, the elation that I must have had at that time when I saw that there's a tank destroyer that isn't using a durability device that's caught out in the open. And while we had the Progetto 66 tell me to fall back and run away from 2 tanks, Uncle QuickyBaby's going straight in. And not only am I finishing off the Kranvang, who was up to 4 kills, I'm farming the entirety of the 111 GFT. And this right here is old school World of Tanks, right? I think the game was better for it back in the day. I mean, definitely better for players who played well. I miss the days where there were no durability devices, or where there were field mods that just mean that tank destroyers become untrackable once they've managed to get them, right? To all intents and purposes, that 111G. And also another highlight to see, I was telling my team that I was running away, but then I switch and then I come forwards, and that hopefully will bait them in. And wow, my Sixth Sense doesn't go off against the WZ-132A. That's crazy. I'm hoping he's going to come around the corner and that maybe we're going to be able to dump them again. Oh, baby, right through. But I really do miss the days where light tanks and medium tanks could counter tank destroyers better, and could even counter heavy tanks better. Back in the day, heavy tanks didn't have crazy turret traverse. Not everybody had so many different field mods that improve it, or premium consumables left and right that improve their turret traverse, or turbos this, turbos that, grouses this, grouses that, ground resistances, blah 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 blah. When you managed to actually lock down your opponent, it mattered. These days, not so much. I have to admit, the vision system definitely paid off there, getting rid of that standard B. But it swings and roundabouts, really. So, with your damage build, I thoroughly recommend the gun rammer. I definitely recommend the vents for intuition switching, and also just for the extra firepower it brings. So it's really going to be down to like your choice. Do you want to have the extra spotting at opponents that are moving or in bushes? Do you want to be sneaky to be able to advance into position, the exhaust? Or do you want to try and improve the gun handling of the vehicle? Or do you want to take the turbo to be faster in the tank? I think my gut instinct would be to go for the exhaust. The only problem with taking the exhaust is that when you end up on a map like Ensk or Himmelsdorf, it doesn't really matter so much. But it's really just the same as the Leopard. What you want to do is try to create zones where you can spot your opponents where they can't spot you. And if you do that, you're going to be successful. So in this situation, I just decided, I'm not getting away from this Leopard. I'm just going to fire one more shot and possibly die here. And you got me. Well done, dude. But that was 6,000 damage with 0 spotting and 6 frags to our name, showing you that the Rheinmetall is not just a scout. Since Wargaming buffed the firepower of this tank, if you're confident enough in yourself, this thing can feel great. It really can. It has so much mobility to be able to outclass all but the fastest of vehicles inside the game. And it even has the firepower when it uses that speed to just outshoot its opponents once it's got there. With a gun rammer, vents, all the field mods, and a premium consumable, you are packing near 3k damage per minute in this tank. And that means that when you catch sitting ducks on the enemy team, you get to farm them really quick. So fortunately enough, that was enough to get our 3rd mark of excellence in the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. I can tell you, it was actually probably one of the more stressful 3 marks that I've ever had. because for all of the games that you saw where we were ripping and tearing our way through the enemy team, yeah, this big box of not much German armor can be really painful. So for every situation where I either got on a map, where I got to contest an early scenario, or I managed to outspot the enemy light tank, when you're playing against a really sweaty Manticore who's willing to just sit there the entire game, and then inevitably half of the time your friends on your team will lose the other flank, it just feels so painful to be able to get through. And having to like sweat and have recovery games, or should we say saving games, where you're only going to get like 3,000 combined on your Himmelsdorfs or your Ensk, but they're oh so important to try and put in, to then mean that when you get these golden opportunities, that hopefully you make use of them. But also, don't feel too pressured and too stressed when you get into those Malinovkas, when you get into those Prokhorovkas, when you get onto those Muravankas. Because if you do, and you feel like, oh, this is my opportunity, I've got to go and get 8k combined here to be able to get my 1% mark swing up, then you might blow it. And then that's where the Rheinmetall can be really painful indeed. So all in all, this tank, is it a good one? Yeah, I think if you're a very good player, this is actually one of the better light tanks in the game. However, I really wouldn't recommend it for many players. Outside of the specific use case inside Onslaught, I think you'd just do better playing some of the other light tanks inside the random queue. I think a 13105 will be more fun. I think an EBR 105 will be more fun. And the Manticore will undoubtedly be more competitive. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was my masterclass on the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. Really hope it was useful for you, and I went into some great detail for your light tank thinking and blah-de-blah. If it was and you loved it, then give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.